Why opportunity cost is killing the success of your portfolio. Now, we all know long-term property investing is what it's all about. But there are moments where long-term can actually hurt your success. And that is when you don't give yourself enough markets to look at and review to take the right opportunities for that given time. A perfect example is the typical backyard investor. Now, as a backyard investor, you might have this magnifying glass on just the suburbs around your house that you live in. It feels comfortable, you can drive by, you can see it, you know the local areas, but to be honest, knowing the areas is a very small part to what investing success requires. Because knowing the areas is not knowing the data, it's just knowing nice streets, perhaps not so good streets, which are important, but not the key deciders. So I want to give you an example of opportunity cost. Let's just say you're an investor who lives in Sydney and you feel that, hey, in the northwest of Sydney, this is where my home is, and I just want to invest around the northwest of Sydney. Whether it's a good time or a bad time, you'll keep investing in there, hoping for the long term, or because you know that area. Sometimes you may not invest until it's the right time for that area. What's interesting is when property markets do their double in every 10 years, it doesn't really happen in the way that everyone seems to think it does. Firstly, not all markets do double in 10 years. And secondly, when you see growth over 10 years, it's never evenly spread across the years. You usually have 6 to 7 years of declining or stable markets. They're just basically a little bit of growth or a little bit of decline or flat, or you have your big downward movements in that timeline. But that 6 to 7 years represents about 70% or 60% of that time period, which means you could be either A, waiting for a long time until you have that growth or success in your portfolio, or B, you could be waiting a long time till you even decide to buy the next property because of that flat or declining portion. Now, the next part is the 2 to 4 years that happens in the remaining window of that 10-year bracket. And that is where growth, or some people like to call it boom, occurs. Now, it doesn't happen every 10 years, but when it does happen, it doesn't really go on for longer than 2 to 4 years of that 10-year window, which means mistiming that or getting it slightly late in that timing point could actually mean you're missing out on a lot of opportunity elsewhere, or you're sitting idle for a long time, or you've bought and you've had to wait a long time until it picks up again. Now that's dangerous because life goes by, life is short, and all of a sudden your investing results haven't been as strong as they could be. Whereas person B, who considers that opportunity cost, looks for markets at those given times that may produce results over the next 2, 3, and 5 years, but still keep intact long-term market fundamentals. Let me give you another example. I purchased a property during Sydney's booming market, 2015. Now, yes, it did grow a little bit, then it came down, then it grew back again. And if I look back, it probably wasn't the best decision to buy during that timeline. But what followed was I bought 4 properties in Tasmania. And those 4 properties in Tasmania, whilst Sydney was going down or up and down again, they increased massively. I'm talking values of 365 going up to about mid to high 500s in total for all these 4 properties. That's a huge jump in 3 years. But if I was a backyard investor, would I have had that opportunity? No. If I forever believed in Sydney, would I have that opportunity? No. If I didn't do anything until it was the next or the right time to invest in that moment when Sydney recovers again, would I have had that opportunity? No. So you can see all these results and how they can change when you zoom out and you consider the impact of opportunity cost. Don't get rid of the long-term fundamentals. You still need those, but you need to invest for that time as well. And if you combine long-term fundamentals for that time with more options in your journey, then you're definitely going to come out the other side as a more diversified investor, a more consistent investor, and someone who has more success over time because you weren't just waiting for that one opportunity, you were consistently adding and letting compounding growth do its thing. So when you believe in your backyard, or when you believe it's the right time or the wrong time, you're probably mistaken. If you really think of opportunity cost, you'll start to zoom out, think broader, and think the right time is when it's your time, not the market's. as there's always a market somewhere doing something. And that Burnie, Tasmania example versus Sydney at that timing point is a perfect example there, with many more. Think of when Perth was declining and what other cities were doing during that timeline. Think of when Darwin was booming, and then before, as it boomed, where did that leave people? Even after the declines today, there are still many people sitting positively from Darwin before. But had they waited for Darwin to come back around again, there'd be a lot of opportunity cost because they'd be sitting in years of decline and years of waiting. Those are examples on the other end of it too. So think of opportunity cost, and that is the biggest killer to a portfolio.